Howdy y'all, my name is Will Schnatt. I'm an author, philosopher, and community organizer. You can find out more about me and my work at my website, evolutionofconsent.com, where I talk about dualist pantheism and Geo-Mutualist Panarchism. We're going to talk about Geo-Mutualist Panarchism today. You can also find out more from my book, The Evolution of Consent, Collected Essays. Like I said, we're going to talk about Geo-Mutualist Panarchism. Well, Geo-Mutualist Panarchism has those three parts of two types. Two types are economic and political. Let's first talk about Panarchism. What is Panarchism? Well, Panarchism comes from the Greek pan, which means all, and archos, which means ruler. So in Panarchism, the idea is that everybody is the ruler. Alright, so what is Geo? Geo comes from George. Comes from Henry George. Henry George proposed a philosophy where the main taxes would be based on land. And the movement behind George was called the single taxer movement. So Henry George proposed the tax on land, and that's different from the tax on improvements. Okay, so then we have mutualist. What is mutualist? Well, what does mutual mean? Mutual means reciprocal. So a mutualist economy would be one that's based on reciprocity. Okay, and this philosophy was proposed by Pierre-Joseph. Okay, so how would this work out? Let's take a look. So in a panarchy, you have a central organization, and the central organization can be part of a larger confederation, to where there's subsidiary organizations that work in a similar kind of fashion in the confederation. And let's look at the general system. And this central unit is called the civil registry. And in panarchism, its sole purpose is to register these other units, which will register with them, these subsidiary units. And these subsidiary units could be any form of government type or any kind of non-government type that you would want. So they could be Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Marxists. And what this does is they have you have a civil registry. And the system I'm proposing, this would also work as a system of courts. So if there's disputes among these members, there will also be a jury, where it takes members from each of them in the jury. And what they're interpreting is a very simple law, because we'll have a very simple constitution. It will go more in depth. But the Constitution is based on two simple principles. The first is the non-aggression principle. And this is the principle often proposed by anarcho-capitalists. I'll go ahead and write it out. Okay. So the key word in this, in the non-aggression principle, is that of aggression. In aggression, it's not the use of force to protect oneself. It's the use of force to inflict harm on another person. It's not defending oneself, but it's aggression. It's a very different thing. So it's not the same as pacifism. The non-aggression principle does not say you have to be a pacifist, but that you cannot start conflict. Okay? Particularly conflict on another person or on their rightfully earned property. The other principle is called principle of fair regard. I'll go ahead and write that one out too. And the key in this, of course, is the fair regard. And the idea behind fair regard and the principle of fair regard is that you can't let another person undergo some harm while you have the ability to help them and they have the ability to pay you back. It does not say that you have to die for another person, because that's an act that cannot be paid back. But any act that can be paid back in full, including all of your opportunity costs if you were to undergo helping them, should be repaid back to you. Okay. So when there's a court and the jurors come to court and they settle disputes between institutions, they're going to be interpreting according to these two principles. Okay, so that's the Panarchism. So Geo part. Well, a lot of people will say, well, what if one of these organizations gets larger than another, they control more land? Well, the Geo part, Henry George and the single taxers propose that everybody should pay the economic rent back to the community, and it should be paid in full after all costs of operation are accounted for as citizens' dividends. And that would allow a basic income for everyone to survive on. The reason for doing this is because of David Ricardo's economic rent, and we can take a quick look at that too. So the way economic rent is determined is that you have 4 different plots of different value. And not just 4, but any number of plots, but we're going to use 4 in our example here. And these 4 different plots, while using the same amount of labor, the same skill and intensity of labor, produce different values. We'll say, for simplicity's sake, they produce 4 units, 3 units, 2 units, and 1 unit. Okay? These can be units of anything of value. Right? And they can be in the thousands or the hundreds or whatever. We're just going to go through a very simple model here. Okay, so what we do to find out the economic rent is we take the value of each land and line them up by value. We don't have to line them up by value, but it's easy to, so we'll do that. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then you subtract the margin of production. The margin of production is the lowest producing unit, which is 1. So we subtract 1 from each one, which gives us 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. The margin of production is always equal to the wages, which is the return to labor, as well as the economic interest, which is the return to capital. And then the remainder down here is the economic rent. Economic rent is always an unearned income because, like we said earlier, everybody is using the same intensity and skill of labor on these pieces of land, but it's the land that has differences in their value. So the idea behind Geoism and the Geo-Mutualist Panarchism is that this economic rent belongs to the community that should pay for the services of the civil registry, and that any remainder should go back as a citizen's dividend to the members. And what this will do is ensure that everyone has the same income based on their labor. What this will do is bring up everyone's wages, if you want to look at the citizen's dividend as wages. So, and everyone would get the same dividend. So it takes this, which is different values, and disperses it back evenly to everybody, bringing everybody up evenly. And that's the Geoism in Geo-Mutualist Panarchism. Okay, so now we get into the mutualism part. This part about reciprocity. And this is important because, well, what if some people control the money, or what if money is dispersed unfairly, or things of that nature? And that's what mutualism really has to offer. And mutualism is based on a system of mutual credit. And the idea behind mutual credit is that everybody has a right to money. And the reason that is that money represents goods and services. So in mutual credit, money is given to everybody interest-free as an interest-free loan. So the money itself is not free, it has to be paid back, but the loan is free because the loan does not have any interest. The return to money is called, the return to money is called interest. So there's a difference between interest on money and interest on capital. So if you have capital of some sort, we'll say gold, just to make it simple. This gold has some kind of value. We'll say this is a small piece of gold and it's worth $5. Okay. Now, this gold has use value. You can use it or you can exchange it. This $5 is its exchange value. Okay. Now, if you wanted to exchange this gold, you don't want to walk around with it in your pocket. So you could deposit it at a bank and get a bank note. Okay, this bank note, which is money, we'll just do a dollar sign. This bank note only has use value. And this use value is equal to the exchange value of the things it represents. Because money, that is bills, paper, or little blips on the computer screen, doesn't have any intrinsic value. It only has representational value of the goods and services in the economy, gross domestic product. So what happens is everybody in the economy who is productive contributes to this gross domestic product. If you work at a coffee shop or a warehouse or any number of other places, you contribute to this GDP, and this GDP is made of your labor. And money represents the GDP, which is all the gold and all the goods and services and other kinds of products that exist in the economy. But what happens is money is loaned in such a way that the worker doesn't get their fair share, doesn't get hardly any share. They have to work once more for their money, twice more for their money oftentimes, even though they put in the full value of that money. And the reason for that is that workers in coffee shops, warehouses, and things of that nature don't get the loans as interest-free money. Instead, their bosses get the loans and they have to pay interest on it, interest which can never be repaid. Because if you loan 100% worth of money into the economy to people, and you ask for 10% interest, that 10% interest doesn't exist unless some other fool comes in and takes such a loan, in which case it doesn't exist for them. So this is a whole problem. And what mutualism says is that workers, specifically those who produce the wage-bearing output in the economy, deserve interest-free loans to represent that output. And so what this would do is create an economy where people can practice any kind of system they want. They can be communists, they can be anarchists, they can be libertarians, they can be Democrats, Republicans, they could even be fascists, so long as nobody infringes on these two principles, which they agree to in their constitution when they sign up with the civil registry. And then the civil registry acts as a community land trust, which will collect the economic rent and disperse it back to the members to even out the economy based on that land value. And will also give interest-free loans to everybody in the economy to pay their interest-free rent, to pay their rent, their economic rent, to pay any kind of disputes that need to be resolved by settlements in that way, and to allow themselves or to buy themselves capital in a democratic institution where they can work, such as a cooperative or a guild or a union of some sort, or they can just participate in the economy as independent artisans. So that's Geo-Mutualist Panarchism in a nutshell. Hope you liked it, and I hope you'll find out more from my website. Thanks for watching.